Contrast. Transitional words for contrast indicate that the next idea has the opposite connotation from the previous idea. These are example transitional words for contrast. But, however, in contrast, instead, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the other hand, on the contrary, otherwise, still, whereas, yet. These are sentence examples with contrast. He was very tired. Nevertheless, he kept on walking. He was very tired, whereas she was energetic. What you said was true. Still, it was unkind. We had planned to go out for dinner. Instead, we cooked a meal at home. Take an umbrella with you, otherwise you'll get wet. Where would the sentence best fit? However, some modern architectural designs, such as those using folded plates of concrete or air-inflated structures, are again unifying skeleton and skin. However and again are clues. However indicates that two conjoined ideas need to be contrasted. Again indicates the phrase are again unifying skeleton and skin is old information, that is, mentioned previously. Since the latter clue is easier to find, let's look for a phrase that describes unification of skeleton and skin. A says modern architecture forms tend to have separate skeleton, skin, and equipment, so A is not a candidate. B explains what equipment means in architecture, so A and B are cohesive. C says in early architectures the skeleton and skin were often one, which means the unified skeleton and skin. C is what we are looking for. So the target sentence should most likely come after C. Placing the target sentence after C, let's see whether the ideas are cohesive. A and B say that modern architectures have separate skin and skeleton. C says that, in the early structures, the skeleton and skin were often one, and the target sentence says that in some modern architectures they are again unified. C and the target sentence are nicely contrasted. Since the passage flows naturally, the target sentence should be placed in D. Answer: D. A. Where would the sentence best fit? However, the Sumerian language did not entirely disappear. The target sentence says the Sumerian language did not entirely disappear, and this idea is marked by however. This means that the preceding sentence must have been talking about the fact that the Sumerian language almost disappeared. With this, let's look at each sentence. A. After the Akkadians conquered the Sumerians, they adopted the Sumerian writing system to write their own language. B. Many other nations also followed this suit. C. For these non-Sumerian language speakers, the Sumerian language was used as a literary language. This fact implies that the Sumerian language was still used. A and B are cohesive as indicated by did the same in B. To understand what did the same means, we need to read A. B and C are not cohesive. A and B say the conquering nations encoded the Sumerian writing system into their own languages, which implies that Sumerian language must have disappeared. But C says the Sumerian language was kept alive. So we know that a transitional idea is needed between B and C. When we insert the target sentence between them, the ideas are cohesive. Answer, C. Where would the sentence best fit? But demand for locally unobtainable resources was clearly only a part of the story. The target sentence begins with a contrasting point, but, so we need to look for the opposite. The content of the target sentence is that demand for locally unobtainable resources was only a part of the story. So we should look for a sentence that talks about such a demand. A. Ancient trade was affected by many factors, and the demand for goods was one factor. Since A talks about demand, after A is a good candidate for the target sentence. Target, but demand was only one factor. B. Other factors include logistics and trading networks. C. Networks helped move supplies. The passage flows naturally when the target sentence is placed after A. Answer, B. Where would the sentence best fit? Nevertheless, large animals managed to survive in Beringia. Nevertheless indicates a contrast. The target sentence says animals were able to survive in Beringia. Surviving means to exist despite hardship. So the preceding sentence must say some inhospitable conditions of the Beringia. A talks about how forbidding, meaning uninviting, inhospitable, Beringia was. So after A is a good place for the target sentence. Target sentence. Despite the condition, large animals were able to survive there. B says Beringia supported various large grazing animals. C says the grazing animals in turn became food for carnivores. Placing the target sentence after A provides a natural flow. Answer, B. Where does this sentence best fit? Yet, because many coral reef organisms can tolerate only a narrow range of environmental conditions, reefs are sensitive to damage from environmental changes. The clue in the target sentence is yet, reefs are sensitive to damage from environmental changes. Since this fact, reefs being sensitive, is contrasted by yet, we can infer that some positive aspects of reefs must have been mentioned in the previous sentences. Also, we can infer that some specific examples of environmental changes will follow. With this, let's analyze each. A says corals are compared to rainforests. B says something positive about corals, that they protect the coast and can be used for medicines. C talks about threats to coral due to environmental changes. So the target sentence should come after B, but before C. Answer, C.